Hi everyone. Hello. Great to have you here. We're going to get started with the our Kickstart Lunch and Learn. So hopefully you've all got your sandwiches there, or you've got some food about to happen, or have already eaten. This session will probably about 45 minutes, and we'll be doing a few things. We'll be talking about the Kickstart scheme generally, and how to get involved with the Kickstart scheme, what the Kickstart scheme is, and then we're going to be with uh, Primordial Games, so one of our Kickstart employers, and also Tom and Katie, who are actual Kickstarts themselves. So you can kind of see the kind of people that your studio might employ. And then we'll have a bit of a wrap-up session at the end and answer any questions. So if you do have any questions throughout this talk, then please just put them in the chat, and then we'll go through them methodically at the end and try and make sure that by the end of this session, you are completely aware of what Kickstart is and how to apply and what your next steps might be. Just to let you know also that this session is being recorded. So, you know, this will be a great way to kind of tell people about Kickstart without them being here, obviously, and for those that couldn't make today. So hopefully that's all right with you. I'll kind of just get straight underway. So the Kickstart scheme is something that ourselves, Into Games and UKIE, are doing together. We're both a kind of Kickstart provider super team, where they call it essentially we're gateway providers. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But we started doing this. I think it was back in January when we got the green light. Before we got the green light, we brought on it's about 45 studios at that point that had put forward their interest in taking on a Kickstart person through the scheme, and it's been growing since then. So we now have about I think 160 plus greenlit roles. The Kickstart scheme itself, and I'll send this deck out to everybody afterwards. So apologies, it's a bit wordy because it's supposed to live outside of a presentation on your hard drive as much as being talked about here. So if you didn't know, you've probably done your own bit of research, but it's a scheme that the government put together essentially to solve one of the big problems of the pandemic, which has been employment. So, and employment of young people specifically. So this is a scheme that's aimed at 16 to 24-year-olds. And I know whenever we publicize it and promote it, we always get people saying, what about 25 to 30-year-olds, or what about, you know, other ages? And you know, we couldn't agree more. Obviously, we'd love support to help them as well, but this is the way the government scheme has been put together, unfortunately. So, you know, it's great that something's happening, and this is the process that the government has put in place. It's, as I say, it's for 16 to 24-year-olds who are on universal credit, so they have to be claiming universal credit. It's delivered through local DWP job centres, so Department for Work and Pension job centres. The kind of mechanics of the scheme are that the government will pay 6 months of wages for somebody starting on this programme. There's no obligation to keep that person after the 6 months, so it's very much a 6-month program within, you know, from your organization standpoint. The wages that it covers are 25 hours a week. At the national minimum wage, which you're more than welcome to top up. And so Into Games has a couple of Kickstarts who are talking today, so Katie and Tom, and we've topped up their wages a little bit, and we do suggest that, you know, if you can as an organization, it's the right thing to do. So if it's possible, then do it. If not, totally fine. This is all about providing opportunity, so that's still amazing. Just to take part and do the basic as it is totally amazing. So just, you know, whichever works for you as an organization. There is an additional amount of money for your company as well for taking on somebody, and that's £900 to essentially cover the onboarding costs of that person. You can spend that £900 however you want. Could be on software, could be on a laptop for that person, could be whatever you want. But you know, there are costs to taking on someone on board, and hopefully that a little bit. And you know, technically we don't necessarily suggest this, but you can take on as many Kickstart roles as you want, or as the size of your company is. So you know, that might mean if you are a you know, a company of 10 people, a couple of Kickstarts, 2 Kickstarts would be more than manageable. If you're a company or a company of 10 people, or an indie studio of 10 people, 10 Kickstarts is probably not a good idea because you don't want to double your company size. And also we as a gateway wouldn't really allow that because it's down to the, how you as an organization can support those young people through this process and through their kind of continued journey into work. So, you can apply as an organization yourself to Kickstart if you wanted to. You don't have to do it for a gateway provider like us. The benefits of doing it through a gateway provider, and specifically, the Into Games UKIE gateway provider, we're the only games-focused gateway provider in the UK, so there are none of us doing that. There is a heck of a lot of administration from if you're applying for yourself. So, you don't have to do any of that administration really at all for us. You just apply. If it's greenlit, we will then promote that placement for you as well. So if you were doing it yourself, you'd have to maybe promote it yourself as an organization. But for us, we can do it through the huge network that Into Games and UKIE have all across the UK, to colleges, universities that have alumni, as I say, regional job centres, career organisations, all kinds of different links that we work with on a regular basis. We can push your jobs out to. As part of the scheme, you would be required, if you're doing it on your own, to provide like parallel employability training. And that would be, how to write a good CV, how to get your portfolio up to scratch, how to, get your LinkedIn looking good, that kind of stuff. If you go through us, we just do all of that for you. So we essentially really look after the Kickstart participants that come through us with a whole bunch of different methods and ways and workshops and things that engage them during that 6-month process that you don't have to worry about at all. And then finally, we are a completely non-profit organization. Into Games is a non-profit. Any funding that we get through this program, we do get a little bit of funding through this program, goes straight into all of our other program work. So work in secondary schools, work providing virtual work experience in colleges, that kind of stuff. So, it's just a really good thing to go for us as a gateway provider, and you'll have a better experience in the long run. So first question, can you apply as an organization? The job placements need to be new jobs. So, it can't be that you're replacing a role that already existed. It's got to be a new role. You've got to be a registered UK company. So you've got to be, in some kind of traditional company format. And you've got to be paying your staff through PAYE. The reason for that is they can't register the payments unless it's through PAYE. So it has to, your staff payments have to go through that method for you to then get the funding back for paying them. In terms of that funding process, you'll be paying their wages in advance by a month, roughly. So then you'll get the money back every month. You'll get the £900 immediately for onboarding, and then that money goes forward like that. So you need, in terms of you as an organisation, need to just bear that in mind, that you've got that cash in your org. You should do, because it's not too much money, but that you'll have to wait a month to get that back. Your company has got to have a good trading history to a certain extent. This isn't specifically talked about by by the kind of the normal DWP comms around this, but we have had a few organisations not get accepted. They don't. It's kind of frustrating because they don't give you a direct reason why. It could be one of 4 areas, but we've noticed that the companies that haven't got through usually haven't been trading for more than a year. So that's probably a good indication of whether you'll get through this or not. So we would say that the companies that have got through have this. So they've got a good trading history and they've been going for about 2 years, and been regularly paying PAYE staff through that. So if by all means do apply. We have had some early stage studios get through, but I don't know what how the kind of esoteric reasons that the DWP decide yes or no on some of these things. So it's such an easy application process from our side that I'd say probably just apply, but just to say you might not get it if this isn't the case. Kickstart finishes technically on the 31st of December. So you can, as long as your staff are greenlit by the 31st of September, then they can start after that point. But they have to be greenlit by the 31st of September, and then the scheme's over. And then it's gone forever. And it's very rare that these kind of government schemes come out. The government is rarely this generous, where they'll give you pretty much $6,000 towards a new staff member for you to, you know, trial a program like this. So I would wholeheartedly say just grab it with both hands and try and use it as much as possible. Yeah, you know, in terms of, I think we mentioned this, it lasts 6 months, and you're under no obligation to keep someone after that period. Also, it's worth saying you're under, you know, if you apply and you're greenlit, you're under no obligation to take anyone either. So, you know, if you get your role out there and, you know, you have your 5 or 6 interviews and you don't find anyone that you like, don't worry about it. You don't have to use the rest of the program. I mean, I'd say that that'd be quite rare in that instance, but, you know, you're under no obligation at any of these points to take someone on, or to keep them for the whole 6 months. If it's not working out, then, you know, that's fine. The payments will be up to the point where you kind of pass on that person. Once again, that hasn't happened yet, and it shouldn't really. You know, there is a normal interview process up to that point, so the person you hire should be relatively happy with by that point, and certainly enough to last at 6 months. So just to give you an outline of how this works, step by step. So you fill in the Into Games sign up form, and it's actually less than 5 minutes usually. If you know just what role roles you're looking to fill, doesn't need to be the full job description or anything at this stage. Just the title of the roles. That's all you need to apply for this, and we'll send you the link in the chat, and then after this as well for you to apply through. Once that's approved, so we submit those to the DWP, and they approve them, they green light them. Once again, that's usually just a formality. That approval process usually takes about 3 weeks to go through from the DWP side. Those are then sent out to regional job centres, where the local job centre coaches recommend people for those roles, and then it's a normal interview process from that point from your side. So you'll just get sent people's CVs, or people will email you directly with their CVs, and then you can set up interviews with them as it goes. I think I mentioned this before, you know, one of the big things about going with us is that we advertise each of these roles nationally. So we'll put it out all over LinkedIn. We have 2 partnerships as part of this with Work with Indies and Hitmarker. So they advertise our roles exclusively, our Kickstart roles exclusively. And the way that we work this is if people apply through Hitmarker or Work with Indies or directly to Into Games, we then alert the local work coach, provide that person's email, and then they do the hookup from the DWP side. So we have an incredibly high rate of success when it comes to these matches. So we are, well, from the last time we spoke to DWP, we were the kind of highest rated organization, gateway provider in terms of successful matches. There's about 800 of them across the country as well. So we were really, really proud of that. And it's because we do this, because there's a kind of, we've put a barrier between them kind of finding out about the job and going directly to DWP, which sounds like that would be the thing that would be a problem, but actually it's not, because people get lost along that journey quite a lot of the time, because the DWP can be quite hard to deal with. So we take that layer of information, as well as the local coaches putting forward local people as well. Once again, as I say, candidates will refer to you, and you can just interview them like you would any other job. Once you accept the candidate, I think I've mentioned before, you'll just get paid £900 pretty much straight away. That will come from UKIE. So UKIE is doing all of the accounting administration around this process. So they have an accounts team that make those payments directly into your business bank account that you've let us know what that is. And then once again, you'll receive those wages. So it wasn't every month, it's 4 weeks and 10 days for some bizarre reason. I'm not too sure. Once again, no idea what the DLP were thinking particularly around that, but you just have to build that into your kind of cash flow, I guess. So, I mean, you know, in terms of doing this now, it's, you know, every studio should be talking about how to diversify their team. Diversity inclusion should be, you know, top of the agenda, you know, when it comes to, you know, certainly a lot of medium to large studios, but pretty much, you know, even if you're a small indie, you know, you should still be thinking about this in some way. I'm sure you are. Doing this now, it's only available to the end of the year, so let's do it. It's free money to diversify your team, essentially. Interestingly enough, like you know, I think there's a lot that we've had some kind of worries, I guess, in the past about the talent pool at that level. But, actually it's the best that it's ever been, because right now, well, one, you've got a lot of universities kicking out. So you're going to probably find a lot of grads are going to be, claiming universal credit at the moment. So that's one thing. Also, unfortunately, the pandemic has had a pretty devastating effect across loads of different businesses, and made loads of people unemployed. That was, nothing down to their own work ethic or what they do, but just because that's what's happened. So you've got loads of fantastic potential employees ready and raring to go in this talent pool. So why not use them? Massively reduced risk. That's what we want. It's hard enough making a game. It's risky enough making a game. You don't want to add to that risk. This isn't adding to your risk. This is providing you with, I think, fantastic staff for not much risk, actually, especially if you're clear about what they're doing from the start. And it's really easy to sign up. So, there's no reason not to do this. These are just some tips from us. If you're a recruiter and watching this, then you'll know how to make those job descriptions sound exciting, but don't try and put too many barriers in those job descriptions, because it really puts people off, especially at that level where, they're claiming universal credit. They might be really good, but their confidence is probably a bit low at that point. It's not the best place to be where you're claiming universal credit, and you might get scared off by some jobs. So just make sure that job description is really clear, really open, not too wordy, and that the coaches on the ground can sell that job description, because they're not experts in the games industry. So they need to be able to know who to point these jobs to. I once again said this right at the beginning, the safety and support of those candidates coming through the process is paramount. So, don't see these as just, worker bees for your company's success. These are people that are in the early stages of their career. This is a big deal for them, and they need to be supported along that journey. And they could be staff that you decide to keep on. I'm not too sure if I mentioned that, but of course you can keep on these staff as well afterwards if you can afford to, and they're doing really well and you're happy with them. This is obviously up to your company, but if you can make the job remote, that really massively broadens your pool of talent that can come through to this. So that goes to every single DWP center in the country. And it just means you'll get probably better talent in the long run, potentially. If not, that's totally fine. It'll go to regional job centers that I think are an hour and a half away from your work. So, however many job centers that is. So it's still a reasonably big pool. Certainly if you're in a city, that's loads of people still. So it's not the end of the world. But if you can make it remote, we would suggest doing it remote. Just some questions that we regularly get asked, I suppose, is, if you know someone already that maybe has done an internship with you in the past or something like that, then that's totally fine to put them forward for this role. Once again, they have to be claiming universal credit to make this happen. If this is the case, let us know, and then we'll pass their details on to the local DWP coaches who'll set them up for an interview with you. I think I said there's no obligation to hire. Yes, we do the training that is obligated by this program. So we'll put the links to a lot of this stuff in afterwards, but before I pass over, this is one of the places where we put the jobs up. So this is Work with Indies. We've got jobs on here just to show you the range of jobs that you can put forward here. We've got junior coder, artist, QA tester, office coordinator, marketing assistant, very specific Unity C# programmer, junior developer, social media intern. It can be any of these positions. And certainly we've actually funnily found a lot of the technical positions have gone first, which we thought would be a problem, but isn't at all. The talent pool is there for that. So that's just to give you an example of what's up at the moment, and which studios are using this to kind of make that happen. So yeah, as I say, we'll send this out to you afterwards. Sorry, send the presentation out to you afterwards. But we've got George here.
Hello.
George Osborn, fantastic George Osborn from UKIE. Very lucky to have you here. I know you're very busy.
Never too busy for you, Declan. I think that's something that we've always agreed. But would you like me to take it from here? I think.
Yes. Please
Yes,
do. That's
please do.
fantastic.
Yes. Thank you so much for joining. I mean, the reason why I'm involved, it might seem a little strange. Yuki's head of communications. Why is he on this one? And the answer is that actually a large number of members started approaching me through social media when they found out the Kickstart scheme was happening and asking what Yuki was doing with it. And so it's become a little bit of a kind of a sort of a pet project of mine, I guess, alongside everything else that I'm doing, just to see how this is going. But I think one of the easiest ways for us to actually find out exactly how this all works, alongside Declan's fantastic presentation, is actually to go and speak to a business that's done it, and then to go and speak to some people who've managed to come through the scheme. So first up, we're going to be talking to Vaughan Holloway from Primordial Studios. Vaughan, do you want to give us a little wave just so people can spot you in the window? There you go. In my window, he's top right in mine. I don't know if that applies for everyone else, but you could reorganize the windows however you fancy them. Vaughan, do you mind just telling us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your company before we go into the details?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here, especially. I really appreciate it. So my name is Vaughan Holloway. I am the CEO and lead designer of Primordial Game Studios. We've been going for about a year now. We officially incorporated back in November of 2020, and we've just recently taken on a new contract with Sandbox, which is an NFT-based platform based out of Hong Kong, designing content for them. But normally we work with projects that are a bit more educational, geared towards world history, and we're currently working on a project called Silent Tombs, which is a tomb exploration game, which is designed, we partnered with Historic Environment Scotland to showcase a lot of the sites around Scotland, because there's a huge amount of history available in Scotland, and it's really great to be able to showcase it. So yeah, that's me.
Fantastic, and apologies there if my post briefly disrupted everyone. It's not my fault. I've got a loud letterbox. We are going to also be answering questions at the end of this session as a whole, so please drop them in the Q&A. We'll tackle them. But Vaughan, let's go to Kickstart and about why you got involved. When did you first find out about it, and what piqued your interest?
To be honest, there's always been that catch-22 with a lot of games, with a lot of job roles, that in order to get a job, you need to have experience in the field. But in order to get experience in the field, you need to get the job. A lot of companies have tried, a lot of kind of job roles have tried to counter this by doing things like unpaid internships or 6-month programs. Which, to be honest, are almost financially impossible for people that are exiting university or people that are trying to start out in a career. It is extremely difficult. Whenever I got approached for people starting out in the industry, normally the thing I would tell them was get like a nighttime job or something. When I left university, I did a year at Sainsbury's, night shift, while I was literally plugging away at Unity during the day and putting together a portfolio so that I could actually get hired to get a job. And it's so inefficient, to be honest, that when I first found out about the Kickstart scheme, I tried to get involved in it back in September of last year. But going through all of the paperwork and everything and trying to organize how to actually approach was such a challenge for us that eventually we just had to pull away and just say, it's just, we don't even know if we're doing this correctly or anything. So, when we heard about Into Games and you guys put together the bid back in January, I think we were talking with Into Games in December, January of this year. Everything's gone, to be honest, so smoothly. And everything, it's been fantastic. So I definitely urge people, if you are looking for roles, that Into Games is definitely, it should be kind of your point of call.
Fantastic. And so in terms of the process, because I mean, great news, smooth sailing. Everyone loves to hear that. But a little bit about, so you were sitting there, you were looking for that talent to come into your business. What kind of roles, first of all, were you looking for? And then what steps did you actually have to go and take for you to go from putting it down, say, on paper, from that form, to all the way to getting them actually hired? What was that process looking like for you?
So right now, we're actually finishing up a hiring process, and we have a short list of applicants for the 2 job roles that we're hiring for. We're looking for a Unity C# programmer and a 3D generalist to work on a couple of projects, a couple of small projects that we've got coming up. And originally, So originally we were sent the same sort of paperwork, which we were trying to tackle back in September, a lot of government forms, but we had a lot of helpful documents from Into Games, and they'd actually made a few, they'd filled out most of the stuff that we needed when we were really, I think I got done with all of the government forms in probably about a couple of hours. You know, it was a total game changer. After that, and we got all the paperwork through, around May, we started receiving emails from directly from the Kickstart scheme with reference numbers. So whenever anyone was put forward for the roles through job centres or through university advisors, we actually had a few people who got in touch with us, and we asked people when we first got emails from them where they'd actually heard from us, if they'd actually heard of us through Universal Credit. And I think the universities are jumping on it as well, because we had a lot of people say, I'm actually graduating in a couple of months' time, and I was talking to the job advisor at the university, and they told us about this, and then they put us up for the role and everything. So we'd always get 2 emails. One would be from Kickstart scheme with a reference letter and a name, because we had a few people apply who saw the job on the Work with Indie site, but we didn't have reference numbers or reference letters for them. It's fairly straightforward. Basically, we'd get an email from the government site, which would say, this is the name of the person that's been who's been referred to you, and this is their reference code. If you like them, send us this reference code. And then about 20-30% of the time, we would then get an email directly from the people saying, look, can we do this? Can we do that? This is my CV, this is my portfolio. And we'd have a little bit of a chat. We went through a general process where we actually gave them a really simple test. For the C# programmers, we gave them a little bit of paper which basically said, look, download this version of Unity and build a little mini golf game. Just using Unity objects. And for the 3D artist, we have something our concept artist put together, a really simple shot, which is rebuild this in Blender using 3D assets. And then we've had 2-3 people finish the tests, 1 or 2 people for each role so far that we really like, and we're ready to kind of jump on it as soon as we can. But yeah, that's kind of the process that's going. It's definitely not been it's not been too strenuous on us, because we've basically just been trying to keep up regular correspondence with everyone that's been interested, and making sure that they're in the right position to take on the role. So,
of course,
no, all of the government stuff has been, you know, really, really easy. So
which is rare when it comes to government stuff, I must say. You know, having working quite regularly with the government, it's often far from easy. So that's interesting. But I thought as well, and I think you touched on it a little bit, but that point about that network that you tap into, you know, it's not necessarily the case that you would perhaps quite so easily tap into this network of job centres and universities. You know, there's all of these people who are coming towards the scheme. So as a result of that, it sounds like you're getting quite an interesting range of people. So I know you're at that moment of making your mind up and trying to work out, you know, who you're going to go for. But by the sounds of it, you know, the quality of the people coming through the scheme sounds pretty good, right?
It's been a general range. I think with any hiring process, you do get a full range of different people from different backgrounds, which is really good. But we were really surprised. We knew that, especially with the Kickstart scheme, that we would be hiring people that would be fresh out of university. So there would be a general element of training to involve. There would at least be kind of a dampener of at least a month or so, where we'd have to sit them down and basically explain how we do things and get them up to speed and give them the programs to mess around with and a few tasks. But our favorite, both the programmers and the artists, is when they came through on the tests. It was absolutely brilliant. You know, I know a lot of people down in London who were incredible programmers, incredible artists, incredible designers, but they didn't have that kind of that tangible skill of being able to sell themselves. So a lot of times they literally would just have to take any job that came along, and you'd see so much talent just get wasted, to be honest. And we're really excited to take on these new roles, because these guys that we are going to hire, the couple of guys that we've got in mind, it's going to be a really tough decision, because these guys are really talented. It's really surprising to see, this level of talent that's come through the scheme. To be honest, we don't have to teach them a thing. So they're literally going to be able to jump straight onto a computer and then just kind of go. We just kind of see what they can do. So we're really excited.
Well, that's fascinating. I've got two more quick questions for you as well, just to round things off on this part of the conversation. So first question is about what kind of impact you think this might have on your business, because, a lot of the time I know that people are looking to grow their businesses, they want to expand, but I think Declan mentioned it earlier, risky, right? You're bringing someone new into the business, you might not necessarily have that much cash on the door. It can be problematic or challenging and could put you in a strange position. Has this helped in terms of the way you're thinking about the way your business is going to grow or manage the projects that you're working on now?
Oh, absolutely. I think that risk is kind of inherent in any job recruiting scenario. You never know what kind of person you're going to get. That's the reason that you do things like 2-point interviews, and you do these kind of starting tests, just so you can try and get as good an indication as possible about what this person is going to be like. I had a producer at a previous job who used to say that you don't just hire someone who is the best for the role, you hire someone who's actually the best for the team. So sometimes someone's personality and the way they interact in the team setting is actually going to be more important than whether or not they can sit down and actually do the X's and O's. So the Kickstart scheme has been really good for this, just because it's gotten all of the bureaucracy and the paperwork out of the way. And I'd still urge anyone who wants to jump into this, the first point of call should absolutely be Into Games, because if you don't know anything about the scheme, they can absolutely kind of teach you the ropes to begin with. And then you can work alongside Into Games if you've got any questions or anything. I mean, one of the big issues with doing anything with a government-run organization is you've never got a point of call, or you've got a person that you can go to and say, look, I'm confused about this, I'm confused about that. There's always going to be risks with any hiring procedure, but the fact that Into Games kind of got this established protocol about this is the way you do this, and then this, and then this. You've got the short list of things you need to do. I mean, even if you've never hired before, it's really a fantastic idea. Not just because it's going to be a bit cheaper for you to be able to get a couple of new employees to a starting role, but also because you're going to be able to understand how the recruiting process actually works if it's something you haven't done before for starting studios.
Well, fantastic. And I mean, I think you've probably answered my actual final question for you there, which was just going to be, in terms of businesses, if there was one thing that you wanted to say to them about the Kickstart scheme, what would it be? I think your answer of go and talk to Into Games straight away seemed to be potentially an answer to that. But would there be anything else you'd like to add?
Absolutely. Even though I say absolutely Into Games should be your own point of call, and I'm really only talking, to people that are just starting with recruiting, because I think everyone wants, especially for some of the established studios, everyone's got their own way of doing their own recruiting. Is you definitely have to go do your own research. You definitely have to go out of your way to look at people. We actually had a really interesting role, a person who was we were going to hire for one of the roles, who was sending absolutely wonderful email, and she had an absolutely wonderful portfolio. But then we did a background search and we saw some of her Facebook and Twitter posts, and you really get an idea of it. It was just like, oh, that was a close one. She definitely would not have been a good fit, and she would not have been happy where we are. You need to do your own research on these people, especially if you're going to trust them, to come into your business and actually represent it. So even though Into Games is going to be a really fantastic point of call, so you learn the procedures, I would just urge anyone to do your own research on the people that you like and really try and learn as much about them as you can.
Fantastic. Well, there we go. Well, Vaughan, thank you so much for that. I've seen some questions are coming through. As I said earlier, we'll be tackling them at the end of the session, which will be at about sort of 10, 15 minutes time. But, one of the things that's really important about the scheme is actually it's helping people get into work. So what better opportunity than now to actually speak to some people who've managed to get into work as a result of this. So we're joined by Katie. Do you want to give us a quick wave, Katie?
Hello.
There we go. Hello. And we've got Tom up there as well. Hi, Tom.
Hello, how's it going?
So, right, thank you very much. So I'm going to jump to you first, Tom. I'm going to ask you two the same question, which is, can you just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, of course. I initially went to college to try and do a bunch of stupid, boring subjects that I hated, and then dropped out to do an IT apprenticeship where I learned how much I really liked playing around with computers and software. And after doing that, I figured, hey, I should probably make video games. So spent 5 years over college, 2 years at college, 3 years at university up in London, learning how to make games. And that's kind of my background.
Fantastic. And Katie, what about you? What's your story? Oh, you're on mute, Katie. You're on mute.
Thanks.
There we go.
Me and Tom actually have really similar backgrounds, which is really great because we've got very similar experiences coming into this. But yeah, last year I graduated with a degree in computer games design. I went through, I don't know if anybody knows the transfuser scheme. So I had a transfuser team, and we got funded through 2 rounds of funding with that. But throughout that, I was on universal credit just to kind of pay rent and stuff. And after that, my work coach recommended Kickstart to me. So because I was trying to apply for jobs and I wasn't getting anywhere. So yeah.
Yeah, because I was just about to ask that Katie, is about how did you start discovering that these kinds of roles were available, really? So it was your work coach, and so they made the recommendations to you, and you went off and looked in that direction.
Yeah, I kind of thought, I mean, I wasn't getting anywhere applying to studios at the time, even though I thought I had a pretty good portfolio and stuff, but I was kind of resigned to the fact that because I was on universal credit, and this is how I thought it worked, that like I was going to be recommended just to go back into retail or be put forward for like, you know, supermarket jobs and stuff. And that's how I always kind of thought that universal credit worked. And I never really knew that I could be put into, or I could be recommended for things in my specialist area. And with Kickstart, that was just made even more easy. So yeah, it was really easy.
It was really easy because I mean that's it, because you're working with the Into Games team, who are very much practicing what they preach by using the service to bring in fantastic young talent. But I was just going to say, in terms of that, you know, one of the things there is that it almost sounded like you didn't expect to see a job in the industry. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. I think I always, I'd never been on sort of universal credit before. I just thought that like the kind of the target for work coaches and stuff would just to put people anywhere and just to like get them start making money. I didn't think that they really would care about me, which sounds really bad. Would really look at my sort of my CV and my skills and go, oh, this, you know, we can find positions that are really great for her. So I was put forward to a few things, and yeah, this is the one that came up, and I really loved the idea of it. So yeah, I didn't think that they'd want to do that for me, but they did.
They did. That's really interesting, because I'm going to ask Tom, is that kind of a similar experience for you? I mean, what else?
Yeah,
happened?
it was really fantastic actually, because I was in a similar situation. I'd just come out of university and just went, oh man, I've got this huge portfolio of games and 5 years experience, but I can't get a job at all. So I was on universal credit, similarly to Katie, and was essentially just I sort of was like, okay, this is really hard. I need to be working for now because I need to be paying rent. So I was looking for any kind of administration, kind of office assistant kind of jobs I could, because I wanted to at least do something that wasn't just like working in a supermarket. And since I was applying to administrative positions, my work coach approached me and said, hey, you've got this games design degree, and we've seen this company, Into Games, is hosting a content production assistant position. Do you think you'd be okay for that? And I was immediately like, yes, sign me up, please, right now.
Fantastic. I mean, because that's the thing that's really interesting there, because you've both now said that point, because I think, I'll be honest, I think everyone's kind of come in with some prejudices about how job centers work, and a little bit about, like you say, the work coaches. But actually, by the sounds of it, they are really taking an interest, and when they actually spot that there might be a matchup between you and games, they've actually gone for it, which I think is fascinating and really, really reassuring. I'm hoping for lots and lots of people on the call who are hoping they're going to get the right kinds of people pushed towards them. But so in terms of applying for it as well, Tom, I mean, how was that process for you? Was it pretty straightforward, getting your name put forward?
Yeah, it literally couldn't have been easier. My work coach told me about the position, and on the call said like, yes, refer me to that now, please. And I was sent over a document just detailing the kind of jobs I'd be doing, my sort of day-to-day job requirements, all the basic stuff you'd see on an application. And then I applied for it and got an interview, I think, within a week. And then the interview process went really well, met Declan, got on really well with him. And then I think was hired within a couple of weeks of applying to the position, which was just, it felt like such a whirlwind because I'd been on Universal Credit, job seeking for an entire year. And then the Kickstart scheme came around and it was just like, bam, you're in. And it still feels a bit surreal. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. I was going to ask, how does that make you feel?
I mean, amazingly, like I feel really indebted to the Kickstart scheme, and it kind of makes me feel like every day I'm waking up and like I've got this amazing opportunity. I'm going to work as hard as I can to really sort of make something out of this as well.
That's outstanding. And Katie, was it a similar sort of whirlwind moment, right?
Mine was particularly whirlwindy, but that's sort of specific to my experience. But I would just say that the application through Kickstart for the position that I'm in now was almost like a regular job application. I've been, pretty well versed in that by now. It's probably even easier than some of the stuff that I'd taken or that I'd applied for previously. So I sent off an email. It was just like, if you want to apply, email this person, and I had an interview the next day, and then it was great.
Wow, excellent. So they're really no hanging about. I mean, Kickstart by name, Kickstart by nature, I think seems to be very
so
much the
case. As I said, it feels really surreal, like to be sitting here now.
Exactly. Life moves quickly sometimes. But so I was just going to ask you both. So I'll go to Katie first. I mean, how's it been so far? Because I mean, you've been working with Into Games for a little while now. I mean, what's it been like being a Kickstart-E? Kickstart-E, that's what we've decided.
It's been great. It feels like I'm just a regular. The great thing for me, I think, is that it just feels like I'm a regular part of the team. That I'm needed and that I have sort of responsibilities and stuff. And it doesn't feel like I'm that me or Tom are any sort of different to the guys that have been working here for quite a while. So and I get to use sort of my specialist skills pretty much every day, and that's the most important thing for me, I think, is to just keep some of those skills up. And it's really creative and really fun. So yeah, and the guys are great.
That's outstanding, and you're easily as contributing as much as Declan is already. So fantastic stuff. And so Tom, has that been a similar experience for you as well, in terms of coming in and actually feeling like you're part of the team?
Yeah, the onboarding process couldn't have been smoother. Like my first week at the company was really great. Using all kinds of tools like Trello, which I've had experience with over uni, to like just plot out our tasks. It's just been a really fantastic time, and the amount of work that we've got is very manageable as well. I think I can speak for both of us, when we were both joining, there was a real sort of like message from the team of like, don't let us overwork you. If ever we're giving you loads of tasks and it's too much for you, just say, and we can either walk you through them or reallocate them to other times. Like, so I felt very like well looked after in my first couple of weeks. Like,
it's absolutely fantastic. Now that's great to hear. So I'm going to just ask you both just one final question as well. There's lots of businesses on here on the call. They're thinking about it. What would you say to them about thinking about hiring through this, Tom? What would be the thing that you would like to say?
I feel like there might be a sort of stigma early on with, I think it was addressed early with the quality of applicants, because you hear universal credit and there is an image that's conjured to mind of a job seeker, kind of what that person would be like. But because the pandemic's hit and there's so many amazing young developers who have come out into an industry where they weren't allowed, they couldn't get talks at university because of the pandemic. So they didn't have access to this network of developers. They don't have anyone there to network with and essentially go to and say, hey, can I get a job? Having the Kickstart scheme here essentially is just like fills that gap and is that sort of safety bracket for those people. So like, these are really talented young developers, but they just don't have that network. Yeah.
No, completely, 100%. And Katie as well. Have you got one final thing that you'd like to say?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much the same as Tom. It's just, I think Kickstart's really great because there's just so much new, young, diverse talent around at the moment who, it's not like there's anything wrong with them. It's just that they've really struggled to get a foothold in the industry. They are like amazing people, and they have so many experiences and so many good takes to bring to the table in a sort of studio setting, and they just need to be given that chance. And they're amazing workers. So I feel like the Kickstart scheme is just an amazing thing to to sort of take advantage of for the studios.
Well, honestly, you two, thank you so much for sharing your experiences, and also welcome to the industry. You know, it's a fantastic, fabulous place. So it's great to have you on board. And I completely agree with what Rebecca posted in at the bottom just before we go into the Q&A about how it's great to have these kinds of schemes going on, because I think for a lot of us, it may have felt like we stumbled into the games industry or somehow managed to blag our way in. So it's actually quite nice to know that there are sort of more formal direct routes through. So thank you very much, both of you. I'm now going to drag in the person who I managed to slightly abuse earlier, Declan. Declan, we've got some questions for you. Do you mind if I take you through the questions that have been dropped into the chat so far? There we go. I'm assuming that's a yes. There we are. So off we go. So we have one first from Efron Studios. So, and this is a little bit back to that question about trading history. So I'm in need of a concept artist. I'm in the middle of a deal with a publisher, but I'm not trading yet. Does that put me automatically out on this one?
If you pay anyone through PAYE, then it's fine. I would say go for it. And I think, Primordial, we had Vaughan on, their studio only had less than a year's worth of trading history when they applied, and then they managed to get their roles through. So I think the barrier to applying is so low and takes so little time, you might as well. Because the worst that can happen is they say no, so I would definitely say, if you don't pay your staff or any staff by PAYE, then you can't do it at all. There's nothing we can do about that. But if you do, then go for it, apply.
Fantastic. And so then we've got a double set of questions from Rebecca over at Hangar 13. Thank you very much for these, Rebecca. So the first one is, once the role has been greenlit, is there a deadline you need to start it by?
There's no deadline. You set the deadline. So once a role's been greenlit, you just let us know when the kind of end point is for taking applications, and what is your preferred start date as a for the people in your org. It's also worth mentioning that you can move those start dates as well. So if it gets kind of close and you're like, oh, we haven't had that many applications, or we'd like to do more around this, then that's totally possible we can let the DWP know regionally, and they'll push forward that date for you. But essentially the dates are very movable. You just set the parameters as an organization.
Fantastic. And a follow-up question there from Rebecca as well. So is the maximum weekly hours of work set at 25, or is this just the amount that the government will pay up until? For example, could an employee cover the additional salary for extra hours? So
100%. Yeah. It's just the amount that the government will pay up till, but you can do more than that, of course.
Fantastic. And actually, I've just realized there was a third question from Rebecca as well, which is another cracker. So is there a guideline on what level of experience or technical knowledge should be considered for Kickstart roles? So is there kind of any guidance about, someone who is potentially within that profile?
There's no specific guidance, just because, the studio is writing the role. So it's up to the studio really to decide what the kind of minimum level of experience is for that role. I would say you don't want to make it too too hard to apply for. You don't want to have to set your expectations so ridiculously high. Whether it's shipped a game, had 3 years C++ experience. You're probably not going to get that many applicants of that kind of level. But I suppose if you kind of, once again, it's dependent on what the role is. If it's a role in social media or something where it's about kind of quick content creation, that you might not necessarily need a degree for at all, then I would try and keep it as open as possible and just keep your mind open to as many people as possible. Of course, Katie and Tom are here. They're both game degree graduates, and there are lots of those. I wouldn't say there's lots of Katie and Toms, because they're amazing and we're so lucky to have them. And you can see from the how the kind of level of quality that's there. But certainly there are lots of people like that with that kind of level of experience out there. But as I was saying earlier, I think when you're claiming universal credit, I might not say this for everyone, but you certainly you might be feeling a bit low about where you're at, basically, is what I'm saying. So you don't want to set the bar too high that those people don't even bother applying because they don't think they're good enough. So I think if you're a recruiter, you'll know where to put that bar. But it's very much up to you as an organization to make that happen. What we can do is we can show you some examples of job descriptions that have got filled, and that might kind of help you in writing your own, potentially, if you need that kind of support.
Fantastic, excellent. And thank you, Rebecca, as well. Some fantastic questions, and this is being recorded and will be put online afterwards as well. So all of these questions are going to help other people too, which is fantastic. So I've got a few more though for you, Declan. Sorry, I'm going to keep throwing poses at you. So I've got one from Joshua Baldwin here. Is the duration of employment limited to 6 months, or can it be renewed for another 6 months?
So if an individual can only go through the program once in one role as a Kickstart, so you couldn't renew for another 6 months with the same person. No. You can of course get another Kickstart in after that, so you can apply, and you can apply for, so if you get one, as long as it's not for the same role, you can apply for as many Kickstart roles after that period as you want. So it's not just like you decide one role through this application and then you have to wait 6 months for another role. If it's a different role, you can apply for another Kickstart position anytime during that process, but the same person can't go through again. So you'd have to find someone else for that role if you wanted to continue it.
Of course, no, thank you very much, Declan. And then we've got a couple more, I think, and these I think from Ruth are currently the final. No, actually, there's a few more after that as well, but I'm going to go and just go through Ruth's questions quickly. So the first one is there a portal to access and see all the candidates who have applied, or is it direct emails sent to an inbox, which then have the reference number associated? And also, do you have a rough idea of how many applicants you get on average for each role?
Sure. It's a direct email to whatever email inbox you said you want your application sent to. So there isn't a portal or anything like that at all. It's just the application sent directly to you. There's a bit of a nuance with that actually, and people do get a bit confused because the local work coaches can forward people to that email address with an email that basically says this person's been forwarded and here's their application number. That email doesn't guarantee that person's going to apply for the role. So you then have to wait for that person to put together their covering letter or send you their CV separately. So you might get sent, whatever it is, 30 referrals, but you might only get 10 applications. So just to say there's a difference between those two things, a little bit confusing. But in terms of the amount of applicants per role, it's difficult to say because it depends on area. Obviously, it depends on role. But I can go off certainly our experience is Into Games, and we had around 40 referrals and about 18 actual applications that came in for those roles, for those two roles. And we had quite a lot of quality candidates, and we went through an interview process. I think it was 6 or 7 people that we interviewed before we got down to Katie and Tom. So something like that. But as I say, we weren't actually at that point doing our work with Hitmarker or work with indies. So it could be higher than that potentially as you go forward. But I guess it's down to quality rather than quantity with these things.
Fantastic. And actually, I've looked at the last question, which came from Nicola from Maze Theory. Actually, she's not been able to make it today, but she was asking about how Into Games is going to support in the recruitment process, as in promoting roles, involvement, and if so, what channels are available. But by the sounds of it, obviously, you've got the channels in terms of the DWP itself through the job centres and the networks associated with that. Then you've got Hitmarker, you've got the jobs with indies, and also you promote stuff out through social media as well from time to time too, don't you, as well?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Fantastic. So they get a lot of love, which is fantastic. Yes. So I think we have 2 minutes left until this lunch and learn is over. So does anyone have one final question? I'm going to see if anyone just suddenly types anything into the box. Perhaps a dramatic pause. I've given everyone a few seconds. If you've not typed it by now, it's all over. Like, there we go. Finished. Done. Kaput. But I've got to say thank you very much, everyone, for coming along, though, because this is it's a fantastic scheme. And I think, especially as you saw in terms of just our chat just now, there are some really great people out there who are looking to get their first job in games. And this is a great way to bring them in. So I'm really pleased that so many of you came along. If you have any follow-up questions, make sure that you get in touch with the Into Games team. Declan has just dropped the sign-up link as well into the chat, and we'll make sure that we get that followed up afterwards. And if you want to talk about anything on the UKIE side as well, I'm at george@ukie.org.uk, and you can find me on Twitter at George Osborn as well, so that you can, yes, that really is my name. Lots of random abuse on Twitter. But I think we're going to hang on for a little bit. I think the Into Games team is going to have a little bit of a catch-up after this. But if everyone else is ready to go, then feel free to go and enjoy the rest of your days.